Welcome everyone to P&A Podcast, where we in Physics and Astronomy at Georgia State University share the exciting lives and works of professionals in our field. Today we are excited to have Rod Nave here. Rod Nave is a longtime professor emeritus, in the Department of Physics and Astronomy at GSU. Dr. Nave received his doctorate at Georgia Tech and completed a postdoc in Wales. Afterwards, he joined Georgia State University as faculty in 1968. It was here he developed a revolutionary idea to provide a resource that would stretch globally, hyperphysics. Seeing a need from the students and even professionals in the field, he set out to provide many concepts as a reference right at your fingertips. With this, let's join Dr. Nave and Varun.
Thank you so much, Dr. Nave and Brenda Nave, for gracing us with your presence in this first episode of our Panda podcast. As you know, PANDA stands for Physics and Astronomy, and that's how the name came, and we have you here. So let's get started and let's talk about hyperphysics. So first, to start with, congratulations on 25 years of hyperphysics to both of you, because you have seen hyperphysics grow from its bud. But isn't hyperphysics older than that?
Yes, I started working on it in like the early 90s, but with HyperCard, because the internet wasn't in place. So the internet came into place in 92, but I was working on using a graphic interface and active text and active graphics in the early 90s using HyperCard.
So how was it available to the public if it wasn't on the internet or the World Wide Web?
Well, only way I could get it out then was to put it on a DVD or DVD. So I was distributing hyperphysics on HyperCard just by DVD, or sometimes,
Okay.
On.
That's interesting. So people used to request you for the DVDs and you send them out, or
yes.
Did you try and publicize them by any way?
Yes, but mainly the publicity was in the physics teacher meetings, American Association of Physics Teachers. So that was the main publicity at that point.
So conferences and meetings. That's interesting. And the teachers did come out and request you for copies of the DVDs. That's interesting. So you said you developed hyperphysics first on HyperCard. Is that where the name comes from?
Well, the whole idea of hypertext, that text that is active text, so that you click on it and go somewhere else.
Okay.
So it came from hypertext. And then since I was developing something that had graphic elements as well, then it's the whole concepts of physics that can be clicked upon, either a graphic or a text.
Oh, okay. So that's where I guess HyperCard also comes from, and so does hyperphysics. That's interesting. And HyperCard was a product of Apple.
Yes, but it was developed by Bill Atkinson, who is absolutely amazing fellow. He was really the pioneer developer of computer graphics on small computers. And so he developed the graphics for the Macintosh, which came out in '86, and he developed Mac Paint, and he developed HyperCard. Amazing fellow.
That's great. What led to the downfall of... So we switched from HyperCard over to the World Wide Web around the end of the 1990, right?
98, yes.
98, yeah. Why did you switch? What made you make that move?
The downfall of HyperCard, that's one question you ask, and it basically came about from Atkinson's generosity, I would think, because he was an employee of Apple, but when he negotiated with them to include HyperCard, which he had just developed, he insisted that they give it out free. And giving it out free means it was just ballooned all kinds of developments from it.
Yeah.
And so in 2004, Apple felt like they could no longer honor this giving it out free, so they canceled HyperCard in 2004.
But
That's what I understand.
But you switched in 1998. Did you foresee this?
Yes, we were discussing it at the physics teachers meeting often because so many things had crashed because they were proprietary developments and they just got canceled. So we talked about those as falling trees in the forest. And so in Denver in 97, we had a big meeting and discussed where's the clearing in the forest? Where can we build something that will last? And we concluded that HTML, the language of the web, was the way to go because it was not going to go away. It was the basic language of the web.
Yeah, and I'm guessing the internet was just developing around the...
Yes. So I was already underway when the internet came on. So I was in just a fortunate time because we had just developed graphic interfaces for computers, and we were headed for the internet. So it was just a fortuitous time. So many things like that helped the development.
Okay, that's nice. It's also lucky that the internet developed in a time when you had this urge to bring all this to the public platform.
Right.
That is great. And so you switched to HTML in 1998, and did you see an increase in the reachability once it was on the World Wide Web, or did it take a while?
Yes, it took me a hard year's work to convert from HyperCard there, but Bill Atkinson had created a thing called HyperTalk, which was both a mathematical language and a text handling language. So I was able to convert it in a year's time and put it on the web, and was just very surprised at how rapidly the use increased.
And just to clarify, this was all done during your spare time?
Well, I was teaching a course called Conceptual Physics, which was very much a part of my workload, and this seemed essential for that, for the purposes of that, really.
So you used Hyperphysics to teach your course as well?
That conceptual physics course, and that's the using the conceptual physics course is the thing that really drove me to develop this, because I was commissioned to develop a course for education majors because of a new state requirement that education degree you had to have a physics course, and so I was commissioned to develop that course.
By the state of Georgia?
Well, by the College of Education approached the Physics and Astronomy chair, and I was given the assignment to develop the course.
So that, in a way, inspired Hyperphysics?
Well, the thing that inspired it particularly was the fact that these were science education majors. They didn't see themselves as physics teachers, but when they went out to the high schools and the middle schools, they were often the only person there who had ever had a physics course. And so a large fraction of those who had taken the course wound up being assigned the physics course in the school they went to. So I saw the desperate need to give them support, and the way that I saw to do it was to give them support on the web, because I couldn't do it in the two-course sequence in the summer. They needed more help than that. So that was the main motivation, really, to start with.
That's great. You developed it for the course in a way, but also for the general public to access for free, which is, and I hope you have an idea of how useful it has been to every physics student since its inception. I'm sure you have some idea, but I'm sure you do not have a full idea of how we feel when we look at hyperphysics, and it's comforting to see so many concepts explained so well.
Well, thank you.
Yeah. So, Brenda, I have a question for you. You've seen hyperphysics develop into reality from the early 90s to 2023 now. What went through your mind while Rod was developing it in the early 90s or the early 2000s while switching and all? what did you see? What did you feel as somebody who watched hyperphysics grow? Your background is in nursing, and as somebody from a non-physics background, what was your experience looking at Rod?
Well, just because all the things that he has said to you already, I was hearing those things in the process.
Okay.
And we talked about it. It is true, I never even had a physics course. But I started learning some physics. But I went to all the meetings with him.
Mm-hmm.
I helped set up displays. I could find things on the computer to be able to show to people in those meetings. And I heard what was going on at the meetings. And I even had comments like, does this guy ever sleep?
Okay.
Well, she and I worked together very strongly because we developed a physics textbook, Physics for the Health Sciences, because she's a nurse. And she had access to all kinds of information at the hospitals. So we produced that book, Physics for the Health Sciences, and taught it here for over 10 years.
Yeah, I see that the website has a lot of branches as well. It's got a component, as you said, I think in health sciences, chemistry, biology,
Mm-hmm.
and that's great. Physics is the most well-covered topic for sure, but the fact that it has branches to chemistry, biology, and all the different fields with interesting maps for those as well. So hyperchemistry, hyperbiology, who knows in the future?
Well, my idea there, of course, was to just do basics in those other disciplines, to point them to the basic physics that would help those disciplines, that underlie part of it.
That's great. So, what are some of your experiences in using hyperphysics to teach your courses? How have you found that helpful? Because you developed this for a couple of your courses, but do you have any memories of how that helped you or any students coming to you in your class?
Well, one of the things is that we were entering the graphic era. This was developed when we were entering the era of computer graphics. We could do nice graphics. Adobe Illustrator and other programs like that were available, so we could do nice graphics, and we could make them active. We could do a diagram and then click on that diagram to go off to some detail about it or other aspects. So I immediately put it into teaching. So I would project on the board and click around and lead a discussion, because I've always preferred to do a class by discussion rather than just some straight lecture.
Yeah, that's great, because when I was in my undergrad, I would always appreciate our professors using a more interactive medium rather than clicking through presentation slides and writing stuff on the whiteboard. So you using the internet and hyperphysics back in the early 2000s, I wonder why that idea didn't pick up sooner among other teachers, so we could have better lectures in a sense. So again, thank you for developing that resource for us so that we can go out of the class sometimes if we had doubts by ourselves and look up hyperphysics. While you developed hyperphysics since the 1990s and the early 2000s, you must have received, or so I've read on the website, you have received a lot of suggestions, a lot of questions about the website. What are some of your most memorable, I would ask for, suggestions that people have sent you that you were grateful for?
I could see myself as having editors all around the world, which was beautiful. I mean, they were so helpful. So it's been a really remarkable experience there. But some of them do stand out. So I talked a lot to India. I had lots of communication with India, and so one guy writes me and says, all of my friends are always studying hyperphysics all the time. But then I talked to these two guys particularly, but they were a part of a team that wanted to take their laptops out into the countryside and teach physics with it on their laptops. And this is what made it possible. So I did provide them. I sent them DVDs, free, because that sounds like such a fantastic idea, just to
Absolutely.
use it there. And made note of the fact that my favorite of all was like it was probably 3 or 4 years into hyperphysics, where it was on my computer in my office.
Mm-hmm.
But that's part of a network, and networks go down, and it could be just a power glitch or something, and it goes down, and you have to reboot that computer for it back online. So I get this distressed email from a 10-year-old girl in New Zealand saying, I can't get to hyperphysics. I was trying for my Monday assignment. I can't get to it. So I got in a car and drove to Georgia State, rebooted my computer, went back home, emailed her. So it's just beautiful to deal with a 10-year-old girl in New Zealand. So I wish I had her name. I wish I could contact her now, because that was probably in like 2005.
That's
So-
heartwarming to hear. Halfway around the world, people use hyperphysics
Yeah. And the other one was touching, of course, with the Rwanda genocide, because they contacted me to say, we do not have any books. They burned down the library. It's too expensive for us to provide books. Can you allow us to use hyperphysics? So I sent them enough resources that they could do that. I'm not sure. They would send me a Christmas card for several years to thank me for the use. But that's terrible thing that happened there.
Yeah. But thanks to you, it's really great to see that even after going through such tough times, the university there made sure that their students get the right education, and I'm glad you helped them out with the resources that they needed to continue their education. That's heartwarming. Okay. So you sent out hard copies to India, to New Zealand, to Africa. What was the do you remember the first hard copy that you sent after for hyperphysics? Or the first request you got for a hard copy? How did it start?
I think it started mostly in this country, but it quickly went to other countries. I've sent to 89, my count is 89 now, 89 countries.
Mm-hmm.
But they're just all over the world,
Wow.
To the Faroe Islands. Do you know where the Faroe Islands are?
I've heard of them. I don't know where they are.
I had to look it up. It's halfway between Britain and Norway. and to Vanuatu, a tiny little island, like 1,000 miles from Australia, out in the South Pacific. So it's just gone to all kinds of places. So it's been very interesting to see where things were going.
So people all around the world, in the United States, other continents have your grandkids used hyperphysics?
Oh, yes. Yeah. So we get a tale from our middle granddaughter that she was talking to her professor, and he finally got the idea that, your name is Nave. So she had to admit that her grandfather had done this.
And she, in fact, did get a degree in physics.
Oh, I was curious about that. Did any of your grandchildren get into physics? And I'm sure they must have exploited hyperphysics to its fullest. Over the more than 25 years of development, it of course first started off as a website in English, but it was translated into Spanish as well, and the full website, completely translated in Spanish, exists.
Yes.
Could you say more about that? When did that happen?
Manuel Olmo is in Sevilla, Spain, and he's a retired engineer from an NRC company. So he would come to this country and study material in English and go back and translate it to Spanish in Spain. But he was interested in teaching his grandkids, so he wrote me and offered to translate. And he has been a fantastic translator. So he is fully responsible for the Spanish translation. And I stay in contact with him. When I develop a new document, I email it to him. I email the graphics to him. He has Adobe Illustrator, so he translates the text on the graphics and emails them back to me. And I've FTP them to the web.
And it has been an ongoing process for how long now?
For almost 10 years.
We went to visit.
We went to visit. Yeah.
Oh, you visited them in Sevilla?
In 2017, we went to visit him. We took a young man I had tutored through high school, a Mexican young man, and so 2 weeks after his graduation from high school, we put him on a plane with us and took him to Spain as our translator. Although I know some Spanish.
Oh, you do? Did you learn it through the translation process?
No, I was learning it here because I was just teaching English at a little Spanish church.
Oh, nice. Have there been any discussions to have it available in more languages?
I have provided it for more than 15 languages, but it's a big job, and so I get very little back. There's a little effort. I licensed a translation into German. They translated the quantum physics part, but right now it's just the full Spanish, the quantum German, some in Italian, and some in Talk Pigeon.
Talk Pigeon?
Talk Pigeon.
What's that?
That's a language on the island off of Australia, New Guinea, Papua New Guinea. So they've translated there. I don't know the status of it now, but I gave him permission because it's. But there's an effort right now in Portuguese. But I have to say that for the 15 languages I've sent out, I've gotten very little. It's just too big a job.
Yeah, I can imagine hyperphysics with. If you had to give an estimate of how big hyperphysics space is, to give an estimate to the common man, what's the extent of information on there?
So the number of files is something in the 20,000s. If I estimated what it would take to put it on paper, probably 6,000 pages.
6,000 pages. That's probably a couple of encyclopedias, 3 encyclopedias.
That's I'll try.
I think with the development of good AI, we can probably have them translated better and faster.
Yeah.
Yeah, that'll be interesting.
Yeah, that's possible future things.
Yeah. So, Brenda, I heard from some professors in the department that once you described, Rod took on the hyperphysics project and tried to repaint it for some of his work.
No, that was just repainting the battleship. Is because he had a member of his family who had been in the Navy and spent quite a long time on the ship. And one of the things he talked about was you were always painting that battleship. You started at one end and painted it, and then you started at that end and painted it back. So I thought, well, that just means it goes on and on and on. So.
No, but that really does explain the expanse of hyperphysics. If you have to redo something, it's a huge job for sure.
Well, the fact that you can change the HTML and then FTP it to the server, that means that it is easier to do that. It's not unusual for somebody to point out an error in there, and I can correct that error and FTP it to the server that day. So it's not like having to re-edit a book. I can change it and FTP the change up.
So one of the best things I've found about hyperphysics that I personally like are the interactive web pages where I could insert the mass, the velocity, and or mass, the distance, and a few parameters to measure certain quantities like the escape velocity calculator. Was this always a part of hyperphysics, or did this idea come in later?
Well, HyperCard, from which it came, had such a mathematical language called HyperTalk. Bill Atkinson is one of the most outstanding computer developers that I know of. I really admired his work. But in developing HyperCard, he developed HyperTalk, which was a mathematical language. But it turns out that it was very similar to JavaScript. So that I jumped right in to convert all of my mathematical routines in the HyperCard version to JavaScript. And so that from the very beginning, all of that's JavaScript. It's a very messy language to program, but it operates very rapidly on the web.
What are some other interactive tools apart from escape velocity? That's the one that I can think of right now. What are some other interesting tools that you would like to recommend people to try out?
Well, all sorts of optics, because there are all sorts of optics calculations. So, the last time I visited, I sat in on one of Dr. Winger's classes, and a guy in there had taken the optics course, and he said, well, your hyperphysics calculations saved my butt in optics.
I can imagine.
So there's a huge number of calculations. For the most part, those are fairly quick to produce in in JavaScript.
Okay. Yeah, I haven't looked at the optics calculator, but I think I am very weak in the whole optics arena because I still can't remember the formula for differentiate between a lens and a mirror curve. So I'll go right and check that tool out. So after you switched to hyperphysics or to hyperphysics from HyperCard to HTML, was there a point when you saw an exponential growth and realized, okay, this is taking a shape into the world and this is going to go places kind of a feeling?
It was amazing to me that I put it on the web late in '98, and I would see it double its use like every couple of weeks. So the use rate went up amazingly fast.
So by the fifth year, apparently it hit about 2 million hits. By 2003, there were 2 million hits per week kind of a rate, right?
I can't keep track of those numbers, but certainly I was amazed at how rapidly it grew.
Mm-hmm. I think a few weeks back, one of our PC analysts made a quick log.
Justin Cantrell. Justin Cantrell's been a tremendous help to me. He's protected the website. He told me one day he gets something like 17,000 attacks on it a day.
Oh,
they have to get off, mostly bots. So he's been a great ally. And he said almost 1.5 million distinct IP addresses in a month's time. That's a different users. 1.5 million different users. And they said that was from 234 countries. So I looked that up, but there are only 195 countries. So there had to be some subdivisions.
Yeah.
But I was appreciating his effort because we had tried to come up with those numbers, and it was only him that could do it.
Yeah. No, this just goes on to show the expanse of the reach that hyperphysics has had over the last 3 decades.
So it has blanketed the world. I mean,
Oh, for sure. One thing I admire, I've come to admire, is not only has it provided physics as a resource, but in some way it has seen history. As you said, the genocide in Rwanda, the girl in New Zealand, Indian graduate students teaching physics to rural children. These events are in some way shaping history, and hyperphysics has helped shape and seen the history of the world in some way.
There were some very fortuitous circumstances, in the development. The fact that HyperTalk was so easy to transfer to JavaScript. So that was such a great relief. But the other thing that had an enormous effect is the appearance of the iPhone and the fact that the way they developed the iOS was such that everything that I had designed in as a mouse click worked as a finger touch. That was just amazing change, an amazingly fortuitous development for it. So now I will walk into a classroom and start something on the board, all the phones come out and they're tracking me on their phone.
So there is an iOS app for hyperphysics now, right?
Not an app for a hyperphysics. I've licensed a guy in Britain to develop an app, and he developed it, and it worked very well. But along the way, a change in the iOS bombed it out completely. And so he was unwilling to, in the face of the fact that an update in the iOS could bomb out your whole effort.
Right.
So that's one of the problems about educational software is that it can be bombed out, it can go obsolete. And so that's why I've stuck to HTML. I know there are other options now, and so maybe better options, but it's a language of the web. It's not going to change greatly, and they can't bomb you out.
Yeah. So I think as long as it works on a browser, any phone, any laptop, or any machine around the world can access it. So that makes it even more accessible, which is why I like the current version of hyperphysics. It's minimal, but it's very easy to use. It's accessible. It's not confusing at all. So I really love the current version that's there. Just curious about hyperphysics being an open source platform since the very beginning. Were there any other open source platforms that you saw growing around hyperphysics at the time, or how was the open source environment at the time?
I don't know. I wasn't aware of anything. We were just distressed by the fact that the proprietary tools were just dying. That's what led to us our clearing into forest thing. There was all kinds of fallen trees around us, proprietary apps that had died, and we wanted to go with something that was going to be stable
and going to last.
That would last. But otherwise, I'm not much of an expert on alternatives. This is the only one I know.
I think around the early 2000s, I think Wikipedia started to develop, and it's gotten pretty big now. But I think in a way, hyperphysics is a predecessor of Wikipedia in the sense that hyperphysics was for physics, but Wikipedia is for everything short. But they both are simplistic, they both are minimal. So I think in a way, hyperphysics kind of is a lot like Wikipedia for me, but for physics.
Yeah, I hear a lot of people tell me that. But when Wikipedia went online, they tried for 5 or 6 years to get me to put hyperphysics into Wikipedia, just dump it in there. They stayed on me for years, but I told them, really, I think there's room for both.
I don't know if it would have been a good idea or bad, but whatever it is right now, it's great. What was your... So I guess I didn't know this, so it makes me curious to know what was your motivation to not collaborate with Wikipedia at the time?
Well, I like the total graphic interface. I was part of the PhD thesis committee for one of the education majors doing the PhD, and he got into concept maps, and it seemed so effective to have a graphical interface that you could click. The other thing is that you could start with an elementary and drill down to deeper and deeper into a subject. And so I just wanted to hang on to the concept map mapping, the graphic mapping.
Yeah, I think the map that we have here is probably covers most, if not all, physics topics that have been, and they take you to even more concept maps that outline a lot of concepts in more detail.
Yeah, you can go from concept map to concept map. This is bop around.
It's an inception of concept maps. It's beautiful. I've never felt I've always felt comfortable using the website. So thank you for keeping it intact and away from Wikipedia, because the concept maps idea is great. So do you have any future plans for hyperphysics? What more developments would you like to see?
Well, of course, I'm appreciating the action of the Hyperphysics Committee, and so that I won't be working on it that much longer myself, but to continue to keep it stable and to develop. I still would, and we have such a fine astronomy faculty that just developing more in astronomy would be good, because I've treated astronomy almost like I've treated chemistry and other things. I don't know that much about it. I put in enough contact to point back to the fundamentals in physics, but I certainly can't cover the subject.
Yeah, hyperastronomy would be, for us personally, would be amazing. We have our qualifying exams in the first and the second year, so I think hyperastronomy would be beautiful.
I'm all in favor of it.
But yeah, I hope the current theme of hyperphysics doesn't change, because I love the interface, as I said before. I hope that's not revamped a lot, because using websites or website making softwares like WordPress or stuff like that would, I think, make it more complicated, and there are more chances of it breaking down than with the simple HTML format. So that's great. And you said you still update the content of the website, right? How often do you get emails? How often do you update it? How does that work?
It's very rare to go a day without an email. So I continue to work on it, not as much as before, of course, but and I send out a lot of permissions to use illustrations. I think it's been one of its useful features. In fact, that was the thing that I was most popular for in the first years, is that if you will let us use that graphic, because I teach graphically, I think graphically, and so using graphics that try to give a straightforward appearance of things and then make them active to drill down to detail was something that I wanted to continue and plan to continue. So as far as I can do it, I'll continue to develop it.
Yeah. Do you know who's going to take over this effort?
Well, the committee is considering all of that, and then, of course, I have middle granddaughter with a physics degree, so that she'll be involved in that.
That's great. So, over the last 25 years, has there been anything that you wanted to develop with hyperphysics, but you just couldn't get your heart, mind, time around it, that you might want to suggest to the future committee members?
Well, actually extending the astronomy to make it would be, I guess, a thing that I would encourage.
Anything with the physics aspect, per se?
Nothing comes to mind. I just keep poking at it. But people get an idea. I've had a tremendous amount of help. I've had people, I've had a doctor, a medical doctor in Oregon, who emailed me dozens of times over the year to point out editing, typos and stuff. I had a printing press printing business operator in Belgium who would write me over and over. So I've had tremendous amount of help editors from around the world. One of our favorite examples was that Brenda was amused that I had an email on Sunday morning pointing out a misspelled word from Australia. So that's what you get at breakfast on Sunday morning, is an email from Australia.
Maybe they spell it different out there, 'cause so, as we know, a lot of physics students, astronomy students as well, with physics backgrounds, use this resource a lot. And as you have yourself created this platform, how would you advise these students to make the most out of hyperphysics?
Well, just to continue to explore. I think it's just, my intent, of course, is to have it where you can explore, a free exploration environment, and that you can drill down into a subject. You can start at a elementary level and try to get the basics, but then you should find a graphical link that'll drill you down a little deeper. And so I've done a couple of poster presentations and presentations at meetings, just with that as the picture. Drill down.
Okay.
You start at a surface level, and you'll have opportunities to drill down. And I would very much try to keep that in place, as you'll always have drill down points. You can always go deeper.
Yeah. And I think hyperphysics has an index search feature now.
Yes.
That's probably very useful as well.
I never use it, and so I'm afraid that I have not kept it quite as complete. Okay. Manuel Olmo in Sevilla has helped me at times, because he's more keen on the index than I am, and so he'll make suggestions. Okay. He's been a great ally. Man, fantastic to have a man like that who can translate so well, and that I'm bopping emails back and forth across the Atlantic to Manuel.
Yeah. And I think a simple Google search also gives you almost anything you need. Because I remember a time when, even now, just searching for a particular physics topic gets me hyperphysics in the first 5 results. And just if I search hyperphysics with the particular topic in mind, I don't need an index search anymore on the website. So
you can add hyperphysics to your search in Google.
Yeah.
And that will narrow it down to search the hyperphysics server.
Yeah.
And so that's the way I do it.
Yeah. So thanks for that advice. Yes, we should delve deeper. So almost every concept map branch is a course that the students take, and that course these links can direct them to learn more and more about the course. So I think I would like to thank you give you a thank you from all the graduate students around the world, all the undergraduate students, all the high school students, also all the professors, all the educators, everyone who has ever benefited from this platform. When I came to Georgia State, I did not know hyperphysics is a property, or it was developed at Georgia State. It was fortuitous for the fact, because when I came here, I found the website and I saw hyperphysics.gsu. I'm like, what? Hyperphysics was developed here, and it blew my mind. Because I've used hyperphysics forever, and just realizing that I am around 100 feet from the area where it was developed was just...
Well, let me respond with one tale. I walked into the acoustics course and had a lab assistant there, and he heard my name, and he hugged me. And then he pulled out his camera and so did a selfie with him, because he had used hyperphysics in Pakistan for 5 years to teach MCAT review courses for people trying to get into medical school. He and a partner had taught whole auditoriums full of students. And so he was surprised to meet me.
I'm sure everybody who meets the creator of hyperphysics is going to have the same reaction. And I hope when people see this at their homes, they know and they appreciate the person who created hyperphysics. And thank you for this wonderful resource. And thank you for coming here today to talk to us, to have a conversation, and educate us about the history of hyperphysics and how it all developed. Thanks a lot again.
Thank you for your efforts.
Thank you, Brenda,
Thank you.
for sharing your little insights about how what you saw in Rod when he was developing this. And I have been an admirer of that phrase, repainting a battleship. Just amazing. That's what this is. And thank you.
And that is all with our guest, Dr. Nave. I hope you enjoyed learning about his life and achievements as we did. This is P&A Podcast, and remember, we are all made of star stuff.
That's accurate, absolutely accurate.
Yes, thank you guys so much for your time, and thank you for a lifetime of help for all of us.
Yeah.
When Varun told us that he was starting this podcast and you would be the first person, and then he mentioned hyperphysics, I as well didn't know hyperphysics was a Georgia State thing until coming here. I was like, I put so many exclamation points. I was like, no way! This like saved my life in college.
Well, that's been inspiring. It's inspiring to talk to so many people from around. So the guy in Vanuatu, we actually got to know his whole family. He sent us pictures of his family and stuff like that. And tiny little island, 1,000 miles from Australia,
Right.
1,000 miles from anywhere except Antarctica, I think.
Yeah.
That is amazing.
So that's been, I get all the emails you like. I get email from a deep sea ocean drilling team that's about halfway between Britain and the Faroe Islands, and they got into a big argument on board the ship about my example of drilling through the center of the earth. So it was good to participate in their argument. And I had to agree, it's idealized. There's going to be friction inside the hole. Well, no, this stuff will So we had a good argument. I don't know whether I contributed to their argument much or not, but...
Well, it helped them form their argument.
Well, these would not be things that would be of interest there, but just to say that one of the things that I can do is like, you see that, and I get people asking me, what is hyperphysics about? It's like, make a card so I can hand people the card.
Yes, that's a fantastic idea.
So we have a lot of cards out now.
Yeah.
Cards.
Do you have any with you?
Yeah.
Well,
And I have a
But
card,
fact
and that
is-
was the other thing I had to say to him, put some in your belt buckle.
Well,
I was carrying them around in my purse.
well,
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yes. This is amazing.
Very
Mind
cool.
if I have?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you. Cool.
I'll just show anyone. You need to learn about this. There you go.
well, I would leave Brenda at, when I did a poster presentation, if I went to a meeting myself, I'd leave Brenda at the poster, so she was talking to the people there. And I come back one time, and there was a guy waiting there. He'd been waiting for quite a while for me to come back from Seoul. And he wanted to meet me because all of his students were using hyperphysics in Seoul, South Korea. So we had a good conversation.
And that was the other way I could be involved, is
Mhm.
because I went to all the meetings with him. So I could learn to be able to at least show people what you're looking for and how to
Yeah.
find it and things like that. And he does talk to me about them. Some of them I understand.
Well, of course, we enjoyed the working together on the health-related physics because, you know, I was teaching nurses. I was teaching, there were a time when I was teaching 300 nurses a year for, you know, until they decided they needed law courses more than they needed.
But then
But
I had to
during-
say to him, if you're going to teach nurses, you've got to teach them something they're using and experiencing.
Yeah, blood pressures, blood flow, that's all kinds of physics in nursing. You know.
Yeah. There was a kind of a spill from both the ends. You spilled some medical stuff onto him. He spilled some
Yes.
physics onto you,
Yes.
making medical
Well,
physics together.
she worked with nearly all the doctors there at the hospital,
Yeah.
and so she could ask them questions about their equipment, and we learned stuff about that equipment. So that's where we got a good bit of the stuff for that textbook.
Yeah.
It's a beauty to see like the collaboration of different minds for the progression of something universal, physics
Yeah.
universal.
I sure am glad he didn't tackle a book with this. There were many who would like for him to.
Well,
just
that's
read the
right.
book,
You know, when I was beginning the hyperphysics project, I had a couple of people really wanted me to do an introductory textbook for physics. And I said, there are 250 introductory physics textbooks out there now.
Yeah.
And this, I could continue to expand and make freely available, and that's important to me. You know, the fact that
It's also one of a kind. There are, as you said, 250 textbooks to introductory physics. This is one of a kind.
yeah.
And free. Like,
Yeah.
I don't think people can appreciate that enough.
Well, that's just the way I feel strongly about it. But particularly because I was into it with a bunch of teachers, and they're not going to make a whole lot of money. So to have a tool for the teachers out there, but that was a shock. We started the conceptual physics course, and within 3 or 4 years, we were hearing that a sizable fraction of all of those were being asked to teach the physics course in the school that they were teaching at, even if that was not their intent at all. And so to develop a tool that would help them was the driving force that got me going on this. And then, of course, we were seeing graphic interfaces for the first time, and you were, then the web came along in '92. And so we could start using that. So it's been a blessing, just the fortuitous nature of it. I was there at the right time. The development of graphical interfaces, the development of active use of those graphic interfaces to navigate somewhere. One of the weak places, of course, is video, because this is a video generation of students. So more video would have been appropriate. It was just too memory intensive in the beginning. You couldn't. Now you could, then you couldn't. Because memory was precious then.
Yeah, I think the committee can develop it more around that as well now. But I think even without that, it's pretty accessible to, because students interested in physics appreciate this source. Yeah.
Well, I probably won't do that much video development, but that would be a future thing.
Yeah, something that the
is to put
committee
more
might
video in
take
it.
up.
Yeah.
Well, one of the questions that you had mentioned to me earlier is was I surprised how quickly it caught on?
Yeah.
Was out there, but it was 5 years, wasn't it? He got the Murloc Award, and so when that happened, I became aware of how much it already was in use.
Yeah.
I didn't understand all the. You can tell me who all asked for this or who all was looking at it, or but until that happened, and that was exactly 5 years.
2003. Yeah, I think that's about it when Hyperphysics started hitting about a couple of million views every week. Yeah, hundreds of thousands of people using it. In the world, I did not have a computer until 2005, 2006 back in India, because internet was just slowly picking up in the early 2000s. So no, but Hyperphysics was famous already before that. That's great. That's great.
I've had so much interaction with India. It's just kind of amazing. It's just, it's kind of hard to send a DVD there because the address turns out to be really long. It's hard to get it on the envelope.
Yeah, I'm
Well,
sure.
it's not only that; it's just the process.
Yeah.
Because sometimes we get messages from somebody 2 months later that I haven't gotten it.
Well, just during
Yeah.
COVID,
Just
I had a
COVID
lot
was
of
really bad.
delivery problems with COVID.
Well,
So,
we had one recent too.
but I'm not really sending out very many now because everybody's got access,
Yeah.
and I'm very pleased with that. It's just so it kind of helped support the early years, the cost of getting it set up and everything.
Yeah.
But now, that cost is over, and I'm not sending out very many, and that's fine with me. That means everybody's got access.
Yeah.
I'm sending out only those for people who are going to remote areas
Right.
with their laptops and don't have internet access.
But I know how often you go to the post office.
Yeah, but not like the early years
Well,
when I
that
started
is
sending
true.
them out, because there were a lot of people who did
But he's
not
great
have
friends with the
access.
post office.
Yeah.
They call you by name when you walk up.
He knows when he walks in the door.
You guys have lived in Mableton for the last
Yeah, we
quite long time.
lived there since '68 when
Oh wow.
our youngest, yes.
Well, in the
When
house
our-
where we
when our-
are, he's
Uh-huh.
talking
Yeah, well,
about.
our oldest son was born
But
there.
I was born and raised right in.
So she's a native. So
I'm the native of.
Okay.
I'm a
Austell-
foreigner from
of
Arkansas.
Austell,
Oh,
Georgia.
Austell, Georgia.
I'm a foreigner from Arkansas. I came and found a Georgia girl to stay.
So that tells you something when he says we've been in the house where we are for 50 years.
55 years.
Well, certainly appreciate this initiative for the podcast. I hope that upon the, I didn't pick up on the P&A. That's okay. That's okay. Good. Yeah.
When we advertise, we'll
Yeah.
say it.
Yeah. That's good.
So what do we do next?
Okay. I think
Schedule.
one of us can escort you to 25 Park Place. I think.
We can walk over to 223. Yeah. So.
Yeah, but I think we don't need all of us here. But one of us can walk with you to 25. Griffin, can you